Well, hi, my name's Tom Francis, and I'm a painter, and I have also taught for 40 plus years, chair of painting at the Atlanta College of Art, and later at SCAD Atlanta. My job as a painter hasn't changed much. I'm in my studio every day working, even on the weekends. It's what I love to do. The toughest thing that I've had to do for 40 years is shift gears from being in a studio full of students and talking to them about hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of things, and be back in my studio and focus on my sensibilities without a lot of extra noise, a lot of extra visual noise. And that's a new challenge, but it's one that I think I've missed for a long, long time. I've always preferred having a studio that wasn't where I lived. And I did that for a little while, as most people do when they're sort of starting out. And I've found that I like going to work. I like having a separate space. If I'm working at home or in an apartment, I found I needed to do the laundry, get the cooking going. I'm in my space. It's not too far away from where I live, but during the COVID pandemic, the virus pandemic, my wife is working at home. My kids are studying online. The big impact in my life is when I do go home. The hard part for me is watching how challenging things are for my family. So the virus hasn't impacted me in quite the same way it has a lot of my friends and really family. It has affected my work in some ways, but I found myself not being able to extract any sort of visual information in the same way I used to. The work, whether it's a landscape or a word painting, relies heavily on pattern and repetition of motion. I've also been an avid scuba diver since I was a little kid, back in 1965, cutting holes in the ice of Lake Michigan. When you get on a reef and you look at a school of fish, and the first dozen times you just see a school of fish. Yeah. And when you get comfortable, my two daughters, and you're in their environment, you start seeing them as having individual traits. So a flock of birds, or a school of fish, or a row of ants, or a stack of school buses, they all look the same, but they all have their own characteristics. I found the way to put that in my work is to start the work from something rigid and architectural. I'll show you one of those in a second. Let me grab something for you. This is a stencil. I have hundreds and hundreds of these things going back to maybe 1980, when I really started working like this. So the work starts with the tracing of these animals, usually, and they fill up the entire painting or drawing. And when I start layering the paint, that's when each of these becomes an individual, because the brush strokes move differently on each one. The color might be slightly different on each one. So in the end, you have all these red dragonflies, but when you go up to the painting, you'll discover the nuances that each of these creatures have. So it's that characteristic that we're all kind of human, but we're also different. What drives my work, sometimes I think it's really my audience, and my perfect audience really is children. They are pure, they are naive, they are innocent, and when they look at one of my paintings, they're not judging it by its technical merits or by its historical connections, and to me all that stuff is actually in the paintings, but it is just, the optimism they feel. For me, my work is not about chasing the fashion of art. It took me a long time to kind of figure that out, is that I'm really making the paintings that I need to make and I want to make. And if I have some, commercial success or monetary success, that's all gravy. But I feel like, celebrating my audience, which are children, and their innocence, and the way they react to my work. I mean, that's all I'm trying to do, is recreate that experience, for other people too in my work. there's a phrase that I like to use to describe my work, and that I think that they are very optimistic. The color, the light in my work is celebratory. They are optimistic. They, even though the images in a lot of the work, particularly the early figurative work, were not that way. People responded to that high value pattern and the lyricism of the work. And part of that was the patterning and the uniqueness of that. But I think it's the palette, the temperament, the light. When people look at my work, you know, a lot of them celebrate along with the work. I don't think there's much middle ground. I think people don't care for it or they really like it. There's not a lot of middle of the road there. The most important thing I talk to my students about, or anybody who's I see looking at a painting that feels a little intimidated by it, doesn't understand it. You know, those are not bad things. What they just don't know is that they are actually completing the work. So it's who you are. It doesn't matter if you have a PhD in art history, or you know, if you're, you know, a day laborer or a car salesman or a plumber. It's just like, or male or female or gay or straight. It doesn't really matter, because you're so unique that that painting needs you to complete it. So enjoy the experience. There's no right or wrong about it. It's not what you see is what you get. It's what you experience is what you get. And that painting doesn't come alive until you finish it. You look at it, you embrace it. You find the truths in that work that only you can find, that I can't, or the person next to you can't.